Welcome to part 4 of Demystifying Improvisation on the drum set. In this lesson, we're going to learn the Stutter and Extend approach. This is one of my favorite approaches to improvising because it leads to some really beautiful and melodic drumming. Before we begin, let's just quick zoom out and get some context where we are, because we're getting pretty deep into this series. Remember, my goal in this series is to teach you that improvisation is a skill that can be developed in many different ways and not a gift like a personality trait that you either have or you don't. My way of convincing you of this is to try to show you many paths, many tried and true paths of study that lead to real and expansive improvisation on the kit. So that's where we are. Now we're encountering a brand new melodic strategy, one of my favorites, called the Stutter and Extend Approach. Here's how it works. We take one pattern. We're going to start with the paradiddle, and right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. Let's just call it paradiddle. We're going to take one element of it, and we're going to learn to stutter it at will, randomly. So paradiddle, 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 paradiddle. This is going to give us a melody that's actually interesting and useful that we can control. And then we're going to extend the diddles. We're going to do the same thing basically with the diddles. Paradiddle, 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 diddle, diddle, paradiddle, diddle, paradiddle, diddle, diddle, right? And then if we can do both of those, paradiddle, 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 diddle, diddle, paradiddle, diddle, paradiddle, paradiddle, you can see how this turns into a way of improvising with this pattern, and you can apply this to other patterns. Now, once we can do this, right, I'm playing the paradiddle, when I can stutter the paras and extend the diddles, I'll keep this on the snare drum for a minute. Notice that this is all I'm doing. You're either hearing stuttered paras or extended diddles. 3 and a 4 and a... And one thing that's great about this specific paradiddle vocabulary is it scales up to really high tempos, and it's easier to play than most things. After the point that most other vocabulary fails, you can keep playing this stuff because it's mostly made of doubles. And you can imagine that once we start adding kick drums, once we start orchestrating this stuff, it's going to get really exciting really fast. So let's jump into it. So the first step is to stutter the paras. In our first milestone, our first constrained improvisational game that we're aiming at is to be able to loop paradiddles and at random and at will stutter a para and keep going. If we do this, we actually end up with basically 4/2 down-up melodies, which we just encountered, but we're going to sort of outgrow that. So it's only going to be useful for a little while here, but it's useful to get started. So let's start with notation you're very familiar with at this point. 4/4/2/4, the 4/2 down-up notation. Take a look at number 1. 4/4/2/4, 2/4, 4, and we sing this in paradiddles. Paradiddle, 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 paradiddle. Here we go. Take a look at number 2. 4/2/4/2/4. Paradiddle, paradiddle, paradiddle. Right, this is the same process we took previously. We're doing written exercises. We're going to move this into our head. We're going to be able to do it on the fly. The written exercises help us get there. No, we're not doing all the written exercises in this lesson for the sake of time, but in the proper course or in your own study as you're writing these out on your own independently, you just create more and more and more examples till you're feeling comfortable. Take a look at number 3. We have a 2-bar example. It goes over the bar line. 4/4/4/2/4, 4/4/2/4. This is also down, 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 up, 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 down, or paradiddle, paradiddle, para, paradiddle, paradiddle, paradiddle. Here we go. Take a look at number 4. Now we're kind of violating the down up method as we did it before now. We have a bunch of 2s in a row. 4, 4, 2, 2, 2, 4, 2, 2, 4, 2, 4. This is where we start to get these powerful single stroke rolls happening, very high energy. 3 and 4, you know. Right, so we're doing the exercises, and then we're switching into creative practice mode, and we're checking in, how comfortable am I with my progress toward this milestone? Can I play paradiddles and randomly stutter the para? Right, so let's say we arrive at that milestone now, and here we are. It sounds like this. Great. Let's take a next step. Now I want to work on extending the diddles. So now we're going to not think about stuttering the paras. We're going to return to our regular paradiddle, and we need to think about how to extend the diddles. Now, this is where things get sort of interesting from the perspective of the teacher. When you're talking about extending something like this, right, you could add 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You could add as many diddles as you want. And when you start dealing with space, right, this is the benefit of extending the diddles, is it creates space. So the melody is the ga ga da 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 da. And the space, the negative space, is just the doubles, the diddles that sort of just do nothing. So when you're looking at space, right, it's hard to create structured exercises around it like we've been doing, because with that many numbers to deal with, you could create hundreds of exercises in order to deal with that many variations. So what we're going to do instead, we're going to take a pragmatic approach. And first, we're going to just think about adding the paradiddle diddle. Right? So the paradiddle diddle is one extra diddle, and it happens to be an extremely useful rudiment, and this is a great opportunity to sort of start mastering it. And then we're going to switch approaches to learn to work on adding longer bits of space after that. So first, let's think about the paradiddle diddle, and we can just think about this as a group of 6. We have our 4, 2 down up. Now we're adding a group of 6. So we can do things like 6, 6, 4. Paradiddle diddle, paradiddle diddle, paradiddle, paradiddle diddle, paradiddle diddle, paradiddle. 6, 6, 4, 6, 6. Here we go. Six, 4, 6, 3 and 4. Now we mix it in with our 4, 2 more properly. 4, 4, 2, 4, 6, 6, 2, 4, 4, 4, 2, 4, 6, 6, 2, 4. Right, so again, you write out a bunch of examples, 4s and 2s and 6s. And you're trying to create all these combinations to build the independence and the coordination necessary to play it, and to build familiarity with the types of melodies that these create so that they don't throw you off. Oftentimes in improvisation, it's actually the melody that comes out that is what is confusing. So now we're doing that work, we're switching into creative practice mode, coming back to the technical exercises. We're back here, and we slowly cross this, this tipping point into the point where we're feeling comfortable with milestone 2, which is rearranging 2s, 4s, and 6s on the fly. Which sounds like this. Right, so we're transforming our paradiddle into a whole subset of improvisation. Again, if you're on the practice pad and you're thinking, I should play paradiddles, do this type of thing instead, because what's going to happen is you're going to slowly develop this vocabulary that doesn't require anything else once you get to the kit. There's no like translation that needs to happen. You're just on the pad, you come here and you go, I can now immediately use this on the drums and improvise with it. So now let's think about what it looks like to add way more space. And the way that I like to teach this is to define chunks where we play active melody and then chunks where we just leave space, right? So the most sort of boring and blocky version of this is to say I'm playing 2 measures of melody, 2 measures of space. Right, so that's a paradiddle, diddle, 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 diddle. Like I said, with that many possible diddles, there's no way to come up with all the exercises to go through them. So we have to define space. But this is actually a great way of doing it because then we can think about this as an on-off switch. Right? We can go melody on, melody off, which is going to be a creative tool that we want to use when we're ultimately improvising with this. So let's try that. 2 measures on, 2 measures off. 1, 2, here we go. You get the idea. 1 measure of each. I messed up the second time through, but you get the idea. And then we start to get to, right, we do this, some structured exercises back and forth. We define this bit in the middle where we can play and then other bits where we can't. And we get to this point where we're getting good at it and we're starting to turn it on and off momentarily and where we want. And this is where we start to think about, with this vocabulary, phrasing. Right? Phrasing is a sort of hard to define concept, but I like to think of it like a complete musical thought. So like a sentence sort of starts and then obviously ends. You know, I have a run-on sentence, right? If technically, maybe it's punctuated with a period here, I don't know, but then this all feels like the same phrase and eventually it ends. Right? So this is the same kind of thing that's happening on the drums. So if I'm just thinking of this on-off switch where I'm flipping into space, which is extending the diddles, and then I'm sort of turning it on with the melody, try to track what I'm thinking. First, I'll do it in like sort of more obvious on for a while, off for a while. And then eventually I'll say on for 1 note, on 2 notes, or I'm on a lot and I'm adding a little bit of space and I'm back on. And so just try to follow you. Again, passenger seat view from you know what's going on in my head. 3 and 4 and Now, we're really starting to flow with the paradiddle, with the stutter and extend approach. Let me introduce two dynamic variations that really add a lot to this, and then we'll leave the paradiddle subset alone and move on to the next one. The first variation is we make, so we have paradiddles, the 4 and the 6, paradiddle and paradiddle diddle. We can accent both notes of the para. So in a group of 4, we have paradiddle, paradiddle. If I can do my 2, 4, 6 improvisation with this, and I can randomly plug in these Hihats, this is a very welcome bit of variation. Listen for the Hihats. Here we go. 3 and 4 and. Low-hanging fruit, a nice easy adjustment that adds some variation. The next one is an alternate 4. And so we have paradiddle, ta 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 ta. I call this paradiddle 2, where we have right, left, left, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, right, left. And this gives us this nice melody. If I use that as my 4, and I go back to my 4-2 down up, let's say 4-2, 4-2, 4. I'm doing 4-2 down up, and now let's say I just randomly switch into that paradiddle 2. That's also adding in the da-da that we did just a second ago. Tons of variation. When you start orchestrating that paradiddle 2, you get so much great melodic content comes out of that. So that's stuttering and extending the paradiddle. Now, the last thing I want to do in this lesson is look at a different pattern that's really fun to do this with. But I actually want to use it as an opportunity to talk about an important sort of pedagogical teaching concept here, especially if there are teachers present in the room. But it's applicable to all of us because we are consumers of educational content. So the pattern that I want to think about this with next is a right-left kick in straight time. So if I loop right-left kick in straight time, 3 and 4 and. So we're not going to go through all this together, but just to walk through a little bit of how this works. First, the first barrier of entry to this, which is a little bit higher than with the paradiddle, is to be able to loop this pattern in straight time at all. You have a left foot timekeeper, there's independence involved, it's polyrhythmic, it goes over the bar line, it takes 3 bars to repeat, but you loop bar 1, you loop bar 2, and then you loop bar 1 and 2, and you start getting comfortable with this. So you get a work up to the point where you're looping the right-left kick pattern. And you can think about some dynamics, you're ghosting some of the notes, you're accenting other notes. This is where it really comes to life. But it is ultimately pretty darn repetitive because you have this kick drum that's always going duk, 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 duk. So again, it becomes a little bit obvious what it is you're doing, what pattern you're using, and so forth. So the stutter and extend approach is great here. What the stutter looks like here is you take any 2 of these 3 notes and you repeat them. So I'm going right, left, kick, right, left, kick, right, left, kick, right, left, right, left, kick, right, left, kick, right, left, right, left, right, left, or left kick, right, left, kick, right, left, kick, or kick, right, right, left, kick, right, This injects some really cool like moments of, you really feel the stutterness of this here. 3 and 4 and. Dropping all these groups of 2 into these groups of 3. And when you have the 2 and the 3, you're starting to play kind of groups of 5. So that's the stutter. Now the extend is where it gets interesting. You have right, left, kick. You can take any of those and double it up, basically. Right, right, left, kick. Or left, left, right, left kick in the middle there. Or double the kick. And you can double them in pairs, both the hands. Left kick, kick right, you get the idea. What we end up with then, if we also tie in like right, left as a group of 2, we end up with 9 of these chunks of drumming. We have a group of 2, we have a group of 3, we have 3 groups of 4, 3 groups of 5, and a group of 6. We basically have 9 chunks of drumming info. And this is where the important point is to be made. It's fairly common, especially in like quick online like YouTube lessons, to encounter this approach where you essentially do the math and you add it up so that it adds up to 16, and you have like a group of 5 plus a group of 4 plus a group of 6, it's going to be 15, I need to do 1 more. I hope that math is right. And so I've got it filled up. So this is a fairly common approach, but I would argue that this approach might never get you to the point where you're improvising with this material. And it's for a reason that we already know. I think it was, what was it, Principle 1? Principle 1, where we want our exercises at early stages of improvisation to mimic not only the technical drumming that happens at Fluency, but the internal skills and the internal experience. And none of your favorite drummers are doing math that adds up to 16 over and over again as they play. It's impossible to do that, let alone 30-second notes or any more than that. So that is a great way to create some examples and to start building the independence and the coordination. But that isn't an internal skill that we need and therefore want to build, because then you have to relearn how from ground zero to improvise with the material. The alternate path is the stutter and extend approach in this case, where all you need to keep in mind are 2 things: the pattern and the rule, which is 1 or 2 or all of these things can be stuttered. And once you cross that first milestone of I can loop the right-left kick pattern, then you start systematically, randomly left and right and kick, doubling these up, and you get to the same place, but equipped with a skill that you're going to keep using. And I say that because as someone who feels very fluent in improvisation, this is the type of thought you really will have when you're in the heat of improvisation and you're feeling fluent. You'll be playing a pattern and you go, I'm going to double that, and doubles on the kick, right? These are real thoughts that you're going to have. So it's nice to start building them from the ground up. And this is the difference between an approach that sort of logically checks out on paper and one derived from experience and with a sort of continuous through line to that final end goal. So that's how the stutter and extend approach applies to the right-left kick pattern. Let me give a little demo quick so you can listen to what's going on. Everything is going to be right-left kick with dynamics, and I'm going to stutter certain elements. 3 and 4 and. And that's just right, left. You can do it left, right, obviously. And then you also start to just encounter adjacent vocabulary, right? This is really demanding vocabulary for your independence. So as you work through it, you start to really build your general independence and coordination. So you're like, okay, right, left, right, kick. It's not really in the formula here, but obviously I can play that. So you start loosening the constraints and you start having a lot of vocabulary. So that's the stutter and extend approach. I want to quick, before we move on to the final lesson, address any you might have a lingering concern. You might be thinking, JP, is this really improvisation though? Still, right? When I think of the story of my favorite drummer in the first lesson, and they just open this faucet and they say things like, I don't even know. I just get out of the way and like something kind of channels through me. Is this the same thing? Because we're talking about a lot of patterns and methods, rearranging things and melodic strategies. Does this lead there? And I think this is a legitimate concern. And I want to explain how where we are now gets to that point, because that is the goal, right? This effortless, almost mindless, accidental fluency on the drums. What we've seen happen a couple times is within a subset, we alternate between technical exercises, right, on the page, and creative exercises. We're learning to pull this from our mind. We go back and forth. Eventually, we've seen that that subset crosses this tipping point, and that whole subset is so easy for us to do. We can just turn it on, and it runs, and it runs with variation, and it runs with dynamic variations and all sorts of interesting stuff. So that starts to happen with more and more subsets. And then we talked about integration briefly. We're going to talk about it more in the next lesson. We're moving between subsets, and the ability to move between these related subsets, that integration crosses that tipping point and becomes mindlessly easy, right? And then as this starts to happen, more and more of our comfort zone vocabulary begins to cross this threshold. And our experience is that we recede, or I guess ascend, further and further to this point of creative director. I think of it like the position of a creative director, where so much is automated that you don't need to really get involved with the nitty-gritty patterns and stuff. You're thinking melodically, you're making general creative decisions, and your team below is basically executing them automatically. From this position, what makes it make sense, what helps one understand how we can arrive at this point of like utter effortlessness that your favorite drummers, where they are, is when you take stock of the layers of automation that you've built up that have crossed that threshold. At the very bottom, you have individual stickings, right, left, right, right. That gets chunked into a paradiddle. And then you think paradiddle, and it happens. But then, as we've seen, right, the down-up method or the 4-2 down-up, whole melodic strategies and ways of rearranging patterns can get chunked and become so second nature that you need only turn those on. And within those are the patterns and the stickings. And then whole musical ideas, right? So a musical move that you make a lot. You go do-da-ka, 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 do-da-ka. Right, these little breaks I'm adding. This becomes sort of a habitual musical move that you think is effective. That too passes that threshold and becomes easy, so that you're not only automatically playing correct drumming, you're playing good, effective music, right? And you start to feel more and more like it's coming from somewhere down here, and your conscious experience of it is to basically watch the show. And this can start happening, again, from early years of drumming. It's really just about spending time with the right methods that actually lead there. But depending on your beliefs about, for example, your creation and your essence, this is why you start to hear people say things like, like they feel that their divine essence, right, is doing this work, that they are channeling something bigger than themselves, and it's coming through. Right? From a purely psychological viewpoint, we can see it's no less awe-inspiring to think, okay, this thing that I'm walking around in, it can do all this without me almost, right? Without the me that's up here. So it is a really profound experience, and it's again tied to what we talked about in the first lesson. Why is this worth doing in the first place? No one gets to that point and they go, yeah, overrated. I don't really like improvising totally freely anymore. Right? There's something inherently special about it. And now we're starting to see more objectively, I guess you could say, why that is and how we get there. All right, that's it for the Stutter and Extend approach. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about how we can look at all of our vocabulary and make better music. See you there.